Hey, what's up, Called? My name is Landon. If you're here for the first time, I'm so glad to meet you. And I'm excited just to be back in our regular house party. So whether you're in Eva or in our Salt Lake house party, we're so glad that you're here. Last week we had a joint gathering. We brought together both house parties to celebrate and worship Jesus and his resurrection. And we had 39 students worshiping God together. Can we just give God a hand for that? It was super cool to see that. And if you haven't heard, last week we launched our very own mobile app. And so whether you have an Android or an Apple phone, you can go to your app store, type in Call to Ministry, and you'll find us there. You can stay up to date with messages. We have a prayer wall, and we're going to be launching some super cool things in the next couple of weeks through our app. So you're going to want to get it. Turn to someone and say, get the app. If you don't have a phone, tell your parents, get the app. Okay, it's going to be awesome. But like I said, I'm just glad to be back in the regular rhythm. We're back at our house parties. We're going to be back in growth track. And we're back into our message series. We're diving into a brand new series called Parables. Turn to someone and say parable. Parable. Now, parable was just one of those words when I was growing up that I didn't know what it meant, but it sounded very smart. If you had one of those words that like you just liked, you didn't know what it meant, but it sounded smart, someone just say, oh yeah. I mean, I used to like those words, and I would hear it in Sunday school. I would hear it with my parents talking to their friends, and I would even hear people say that Jesus used parables. Jesus himself used parables. So I wanted to know, well, what is parables? And the simple definition is parables equals stories. Parables is stories. It's just another word for stories. You're telling a parable. You're telling a story. But I want to give you a definition a little bit more specific to how Jesus used parables. And Jesus used parables as stories to explain God's truth. Stories to explain God's truth. Sometimes it was too hard to tell people straight what God wanted to say, so he would tell it to them in a parable or in a story so that they could understand it and receive it better. If that's pretty cool, someone say that's cool. And so we're going to be talking about parables this month. We're going to be diving into parables, and sometimes Jesus' parables were long stories, and sometimes these parables were just even a phrase. It was just one representation of what he was trying to say. For example, if I said, man, today's as hot as a volcano, you know that it's really hot because we can relate the temperature to the heat of like an active volcano. If I said that I got a cut and the blood was as red as an apple, you would know what I mean, because you can relate that to something you know, an apple. And that's what he did with parables. He just related the kingdom of God to things that people knew. And so we're going to dive in today about a parable that Jesus started when he first started out in ministry. When Jesus first started out in ministry, he had a sermon called the Sermon on the Mount. Believe it or not, he spoke this sermon on the edge of the mountain, hence the name Sermon on the Mount. Okay? It makes sense. And so he was speaking, and he had this long message, but he started with a simple parable. And we're going to pick this up in Matthew chapter 5. This is what he said. He said this. He said, "You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It will be thrown out and trampled underfoot as worthless." See, Jesus started his message about the kingdom of heaven. He actually was speaking about the keys to the kingdom. But he starts this whole message with a parable of salt. And when I say parable, this is one of Jesus's really short statements that allowed people to relate to what he was saying. He basically says that you and I as Christians are the salt of the earth. Someone say that. Say salt of the earth. Yes, you and I are the salt of the earth. But well, what does that mean? You know, today in your GWAM, you use these like little beans, right? And we said that these beans tonight were like money. And so imagine Jesus saying, you are the beans of the earth. You are the beans of the earth. See, we know because of our GWAM that these beans tonight represent money. And money represents value. And so if Jesus said, you are the beans of the earth, for tonight only, we knew that this bean represented value, it represented money. And so we would relate that and know that he's saying, you are value bringers to the earth. See, we don't understand it because we just relate salt to what we know salt as today. But when Jesus said salt to the people that he was talking to, salt had a different value. See, in the ancient times, salt was held to a high standard. They used salt in medicine. They used salt in food, of course. They used salt to preserve things. They even used salt for currency or for money. They would sometimes pay with salt because that's how valuable salt was. So when he said that you are the salt of the earth, everyone understood it because they knew that salt was valuable. They knew that salt was used for all these different things, and so should God's church be. We should be used for the same things salt was used for in the ancient times. And so that's what we're going to be doing and going through today. We're going to look at three things, three areas of how we know we're being the salt of the earth. The first thing is this. Being the salt of the earth means that we bring out the best in people. We bring out the best in people. See, that's what salt does. Salt brings out the best flavors in food. You think of French fries. French fries are just so bland without salt, the right amount of salt. Here we think of steak or cookies. Believe it or not, cookies have salt in it. All these different foods that we like is really flavored with the perfect amount of salt. And when we think about our favorite food, we always say like, man, that was such a great steak, or that was such a great cookie, or that was such great fries. We never say, man, that was such great salt. Salt brings out the best. But also, point number 2 is salt plays a background role. Salt plays a background role. Like what I said, salt is just the supporting character to the steak. The steak is the star. We say we love the steak, but we really love the steak because of the flavor. And that flavor is from the salt. Salt brings out the best in people. Salt plays a background role. And I want you to think about these 2 points right here. And I want you to reflect on your life. Okay, in your life, at your school, do you bring out the best in people? Are you excited when your friends are excited? Are you encouraging when your friends are down? Okay, when your friends get an awesome grade, are you happy or are you jealous? When your friends make it on the soccer team or the basketball team or wrestling team, are you celebrating with them or are you bringing them down? Do you bring out the best in people? But in the same line, point number 2, do you play a background role? See, I'm into this TV show right now that's about this guy that always wants to be the hero. And one of the side characters said this. He said that you're always wanting to be the hero, but do you know that the hero always has the biggest target on its back? And I thought about that, and it's like, that's so true. You know, you have this guy that's being the hero, but you have all these other supporting people that's telling him where to go or what to do, and they're getting him there safely, and they're just playing a background role. See, in your life, are you supporting people in the way that's going to make them that hero, but also get them to where God needs them to be? Sometimes we are called just to bring out the best in people and to play that supporting role. See, point number 3 is this. Being the salt of the earth means we make people want to know God. We bring out the best in people, we play a background role, and we make people want to know God. I want you to reflect on that. Do you bring out the best in people? Do you feel like you're playing the supporting role, or are you always trying to steal the spotlight? Sometimes God's calling us just to be that support. And point number 3, do our lives make people want to know God? See, I had this friend that he was at church all the time, and he was one of the worship leaders. And sometimes I was a little jealous of him because he could sing so good. People liked him because he sang. But that wasn't the reason why I liked being around him. A lot of people liked him because he could sing, but I liked him because of his faith. See, when I was around him, I just wanted to read my Bible more. I wanted to be at church more, to pray more. I wanted to do things like him because he made being a Christian cool. He made not just cool, he made being a Christian something that I wanted. Does your life do that? If I were to go to your school or your neighborhood and find 5 of your friends, and if I asked them, what is one thing that this person inspires you to do? Would they say anything about God? Would they say, well, they inspire me to go to church, or they inspire me to pray, or they inspire me to learn more about God? Or will they say something else? See, we need to reflect on these things. Because Jesus himself has called us to be the salt of the earth. We need to be the ones to bring out the best in people. We need to be the ones to play the supporting role and get people to where they are called to be and support them. And we need to be the ones that when people are around us, they can't help but want to know more of who God is. And so as I close, the house party leader is going to come up and pray us out.